Alright, so the connection between Jews and communism. To begin, you gotta look at the circumstances in which this new flame came to be. That was in Europe, which was primarily Christian institutions had very hostility towards the Jews. In Russia, you had the Tsars, you had the Russian Catholic Orthodoxy, and into the West, you had the Catholic Church, you had Martin Luther. These types of people, institutions, were being very radical in their hatred of the Jews. Burn down their synagogues, burn their Torahs, hunt them down, kill them. That's the words of Martin Luther, people. Protestantism, which is beyond how he's widely accepted in their movement, but all right. So these were very difficult times. And then during the Enlightenment era, obviously the printing press was blooming. People were reading more and more. A lot of ideology, a lot of new movements were growing and spreading out. It was a time when things were being challenged, when things were being looked at and examined to see how can we shake things into better prosperity of the lower class people and whoever was being discriminated against. So Karl Marx was Jewish, but he was not religious. He renounced religion. He worshipped Charles Darwin, which he wanted to name his manifesto, the Communist Manifesto, and put a big section not Karl Marx. Yes, him, but he wanted to do a big shout out to Darwin. That was like his new god, his new belief, which communism really is a theory of evolution. That's a whole nother talk. So, this was a time when, again, workers were being pushed too. So Jews were saying, look, we're being heavily discriminated against. We can identify with all the other people who are being persecuted. And like during the civil rights in America, it was mostly Jews, a lot of Jewish lawyers and people with money, Shekalim, started financing a lot of the civil rights for the Africans. We know what it's like to be persecuted, so they're going out and helping them. And that's what pushed. There's pictures of Martin Luther out there in the streets, and there's Jews marching with a Torah scroll, and rabbis with the tzitzit and all that out there. They're full of that stuff. So in Russia, where communism did start, you did have people who were Jewish within the first time. Again, this was the belief that, okay, communism is going to be a whole new equal opportunity. The old institutions which have persecuted not just us, but all the other peasants and the proletariats, the farmers, the craftsmen, the workers, all of that. There's going to be a whole new thing. We're going to flip the old system and make a new system where everyone's equal. So the Jews, like Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, these are all secular atheists. They renounce religion, they renounce Moses, and Orthodox Judaism, they would be considered non-Jews. So these people basically said, look, we're being persecuted. Now we're going to flip it, get rid of the institutions that were causing many problems, and create a whole new system. And this just grew and grew and grew until the big monster became the Soviet Union, which and approximately 500,000 Jews fought for the Red Army in World War II. Because so many Jews, obviously Germany's pushing into Poland, pushing into there. If you can't get to America, because America was landlocked off, they were not taking refugees. They sent ships back to Europa, to Germany, to Austria, in which Jews were trying to go to America, and they came back to Europa, and they were sent to concentration camps and died. So that's things they don't tell you about the American history books, but you can look these things up. So only place that was accepting refugees in was the British Empire. You could go to either to England, to Northern, the Highlander, Scotland, or practically anywhere throughout the empire. So they were very receiving. Well, not very, but they were taking in some people. So most Jews were pretty much either trying to go there, go underground, or go to the Soviet Union. So a lot of Jews got pushed that way, and people were already living there. Now Russia also had huge amounts of poor Jews too. I'm sure some of you have seen Fiddler on the Roof. If I were a rich man, I do. So, yeah, Tavia. So there were a lot of poor Jews there, peasants. So this was quite a mixture of things, and main Orthodox Judaism and other different types of Judaism really renounced communism. They had nothing to do with it. It was mostly a secular movement among people of the Hebrew heritage, so to speak. So this grew, and that was pretty much financed. That, okay, we're going to get rid of these institutions that were oppressing us, and from there, we're going to create a whole new, big, happy world. As we know, Trotsky got a pickaxe in the back of the head. Lenin was, as he was dying, pretty much Stalin became his mother and abused that relationship and basically kept them pushed off from everyone else, so Stalin became a leader. And Stalin was, the policy of the Soviet Union was they would take Jews and have them in the Soviet Union, but it was illegal to speak Hebrew or learn Hebrew, illegal to have a Torah, stuff like that later on. After World War II, as I said, over 500,000 Jews fought in World War II on the Red Army side. About 300,000 of them died, so quite tragic. And a lot of them came back, all these medals and everything. And pretty much Stalin did a 180. He looked at conspiracies. This is when we see the big and major anti-Zionist conspiracies come out of Russia. Because Stalin was thinking, all right, these Jews, some of them over here are quite socialist. And Israel at the beginning was socialist because obviously you have a bunch of refugees who... you have a bunch of refugees who don't have lots of resources, all right? For capitalism, you need das Kapital, shekelim, money. So because you have all these refugees coming in, they basically all had to work together because they did not have much coming out of Europa. But the majority of the Jews who were first to Israel were Mizrahi, Sephardic, what we would call the Jews in the Middle East and surrounding area, Yemeni, Iraq, Iran, Morocco. Over 1 million Jews left Morocco, and they all went, we sent them out to Israel. And so all these people are here, don't have great riches, not yet. Well, some of them did, but obviously the majority have not. So they all work together in these collectives, which they call the kibbutz, which is where you have a farm, which is the center of the community, because you have to have food. So everyone works, look, you help build my house, I help build your house, we all help build Frank's house, and then we build Shmui's house, and we all work together and build our community. Then once we get the farm going, 5 of us out of every village here, out of every 10 or so, will go work in the factory. Once we build that, and then we keep growing and building and building. That's how a lot of Israel was built at that time. Because, like I said, for capitalism, you need capital. So the Jews came out and worked, and they were socialists. So Stalin was like, okay, these people might be more adaptive to accepting a Soviet bloc. The Soviet Union expanded, pushed all the way to Berlin. It was looking for all these blocs, these little satellite nations which they could control, dominate, and spread their influence. It was out in Africa, with Korea and Vietnam. So this was something that was spreading, the international communist movement at that time. While I was in America, the Marshall Plan, which was the international capitalist plan. The freedom and liberty come out of that, and you had totalitarianism and communism spreading from the East. So it turned out that Israel did not want the Soviet Union as their big bloc. They wanted to be independent. And plus, at that time, the Soviet Union was training, giving weapons and money to the Muslim nations at that time. So you had Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Iraq. The Soviet Union was training them and funding them during many of the wars. 1948 wars, the Yom Kippur wars, these were backed by Soviet Union. They had Soviet weaponry, tanks, planes, MiGs, Kalashnikovs, AK-47s, and all that stuff in training was coming from Soviet Union. So Israel was very concerned in its early years that, okay, look, if we are too war, the war is going on, if we push too far, we take Beirut, if we go to Damascus, if we take the Suez Canal, will the Soviet Union get involved? And that was a huge issue back then. If the Soviet Union got involved, you could have 1 million troops on your doorstep within weeks. So that was something they were very concerned about, especially in the Yom Kippur War. And what usually happens with the Muslim countries is that obviously they cannot win. So they would get beat quite severely and lose land. They go, oh, the Jews the Israelis the Zionists are coming after us. What are we going to do? We must run to United Nations and to Soviet bloc. So all these people pretty much went to the Soviet Union, United Nations, and they called for ceasefires and treaties and all that garbage. So really, we could have had lots of land, but they always ran to the Soviet Union, who was like their daddy, and stepped in and basically put an end to Israel retribution. So these countries like slapping us, taunting us, and then we grab them by the neck, like the prophecy says in the Tanakh, Judah shall have his enemy's hands on his neck. And then they scream, and the Soviet Union comes and helps them. And if you look today, it's not really that much difference, because you have Russia and Syria, Iran and Turkey, and in Lebanon, and the other places like that, Putin. He's an ideologist of the Soviet Union. He grew up in the atmosphere. He even had quotes that said, look, whoever does not miss the Soviet Union has no heart, but whoever wants it back has no brain. All right? He grew up in that culture, which was intoxicating. Soviet Union was constant propaganda, constant barrages of posters, of movies, of music. It was Das Wunderbar, wonderful life. Promoted to them constantly, They were going to the moon, they were conquering this land. It was constant hope and uplifting of the people, at least with the propaganda. Maybe not with the food supplies and with the KGB killing people off, but at least you had wonderful propaganda, which really got into people's brains. That's why the Communist Party is the second biggest in Russia today. Obviously, you have Putin's party, the Big Tent, with the bear on it, and you have all these other parties. So, after that time, Stalin had a thing called the Doctor's Plot, 1950s, before he passed away. And that was what became, pretty much, he was going to have a falsification process, because already at this time, Jews were being persecuted in the Soviet Union. They were being tracked, they were being monitored, especially people who were important in the politics, in the army, doctors, the intellectuals, stuff like that, they were being tracked down. There actually was a group in the mountains that claimed to be Jewish, but they said, oh, well, we're only traditional cultural Jews. So the Soviet Union left them alone. That was quite interesting. I believe that was in the Caucasus region too. So that was actually probably Karaite Jews, quite interesting. But anyways, the Soviet Union, for some reason, that was like one of the few groups they let practice their Judaism. They said, oh, well, they're only cultural, they're in the mountains, so it's not really bothering anyone. But the main hard line of the Soviet Union was state-enforced atheism. Even the Russian Orthodox Church was quite heavily suppressed. So, yeah, Judaism, it was illegal. You could get sent to a gulag if you practiced or spoke Hebrew, even Yiddish. Torah scrolls were banned. So you did have underground movements in the Soviet Union. People from Israel were actually getting sent into Russia to kind of smuggle Jews out, because Soviet Union are in war, and they were not allowing Jews to come out of the Soviet Union, go back to Israel. Because that's where we all come from, that's our faith and everything's based on, and if a Jew converts, Israel is his home. So all these people were locked in the Soviet Union, and there was this case where probably a big turning point for Stalin was when Golda Meir came over. And obviously, with the big Jewish prime minister, and she was a woman. So she went to visit the Soviet Union, and she met with Stalin and stuff like that. Well, she met with Stalin, but she went to the Soviet Union, and the Jews in the streets who saw her said, mein Golda, my Golda. And this offended Stalin. He said, why are they praising and, singing great songs about her? I'm the one who took you out of the concentration camps and give you this state where you're no longer persecuted. So that was probably a big turning point for him when he turned and said, okay, well, the Jews are not really all for us, they're not die hard for us like all these other peoples. So, and Israel's not really following our ideology, they're doing their own thing. So basically they came hardline in, they had a bunch of mock fake trials and started accusing Jews of stuff. And like I said, we had the doctor's plot going on, they were accusing all these Jews of different things. Trying to create the grand conspiracy, trying to kill Stalin and stop the Soviet Union and stuff like that. So that was a big, big issue. And when he died, it was pushed, the doctor's plot ended, but it was still harsh for the Jews. So obviously the Soviet Union fell, and then I think it was over 1 million Jews pushed into Eretz Israel. That became quite a big movement, because for the first time ever in Israel, you had people coming into the land who had doctorates in nuclear physics and stuff like that. All these high trained stuff which they learned for free practically in the Soviet Union. So it boosted their values and different trades and different, basically keys unlocked new ways into Israel. So most of the Soviet Union, in the beginning, was a lot of Jews. They thought, okay, this is our freedom as a people. They were not religious Jews, and they thought, okay, this is our way to boost our people out of persecution, but not only our people, but the other people who are oppressed as well. And Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, Karl Marx, and probably others. You know, they were not religious, they were not wrapping tefillin, they were not wearing tzitzit, they probably never wore a kippah, especially in later days. So these were people who were far removed and wanted nothing to do with their faiths. So that was the connection with that. Anyways, hope this explained a lot of things. May you all have a great day.